I had one client years ago that was in some type of accident where I guess their capacity to reason and to make judgments was diminished, but it was a tough time getting something medically diagnosed, and this person was able to continue working a job, right? But they did need guardianship. So in that type of case, that person would not be eligible for for these resource dependent public benefits.
But they may qualify for not resource dependent public benefits, is what you're saying in that case, or no, because they were able to work.
Yeah. I mean, we all qualify for the non-resource dependent public benefit, like Social Security, right?
Sure.
We're all eligible for that. Medicare, we're all eligible for that, right? So special needs planning is it's getting into those resource dependent public benefits. And again, the idea that you can't make over a certain amount, you can't have over a certain amount in your name. So how does one plan for the care of somebody without them having assets in their name?
Yeah. So let's continue on the conversation, because I think that's something people really struggle with, right? Especially if you are in a weird kind of limbo where maybe you're right on that edge where, you have, and I say this because I've seen it, maybe you make a relatively decent income, you're towards that upper threshold. You would have some discretionary income to maybe, save and invest for your future and, put money away for retirement. However, because retirement assets are looked at as a, asset and resource for the testing purposes, they feel that, they just have to live more in the present, in the moment, and they don't have always, they have, or maybe don't know how to go and save and invest for the future in a way that doesn't affect the benefits that their children need. Right.
Yeah.
What's out there? Where does somebody go? What do they look for? What are the options?
Right. So I'll give you kind of the typical trajectory of from the perspective of a parent, a special needs parent, which I am, that, maybe you're planning for the long-term future and care of your child. So again, when that child turns 18, the resources, the income of the parents are no longer deemed available to them. So let's say that they qualify for SSI, right? So supplemental security income, as well as Medicaid. Now, in a lot of cases, what I'll see is that adult now with special needs will continue to live. They may continue to live with the parents, right? If that's the case, then they can still receive supplemental security income. It will be reduced to some extent. Okay. The question is really about how you plan for when you're no longer here, right? And so that's where things like special needs trust come into play. And that's where things like ABLE accounts come into play. So special needs trusts are basically a type of trust that are set up for an individual that is receiving resource-dependent public benefits. And money left in that special needs trust, or money placed in that special needs trust for that adult, is not counted towards the resource limit.
And so is that typically an irrevocable or a revocable trust structure? I imagine that's probably...
Yeah. Irrevocable, yeah. Special needs trusts are typically irrevocable.
Yep.
A lot of cases, I'll tell you, they're set up as testamentary trusts. Because again, if that child, now adult, if their needs are being met to an extent, with the help of the parents or other family, the trust may not technically need to exist until the parents have passed on and they're leaving assets now for the care of that child. Mm-hmm. So if it's set up as a testamentary trust within the will, then they pass away, the trust is created, and the assets or in life insurance or whatever it is goes into that trust.
Okay, and there's different kinds of trusts or different structures you kind of use here, and you've touched on again testamentary or something established while you're alive. But what about controlling parties or controlling interests? Who can have kind of control over funds and decision-making authority on funds for the beneficiary and have it not affect, or maybe it does affect the ability for somebody to qualify for benefits?
Yeah. So, obviously you have to have a trustee like any other trust. Mm-hmm. The trust, it's not so much as there's different types of special needs trust, but you can either stand it up while, as the person setting it up, right? You can either set it up while you're alive, or you can have it to be set up, once you pass away. There are certain things that the trust can and cannot do. There's certain things that the trust can and cannot pay for. The big one is that a special needs trust, cannot pay for food and shelter technically, right? Because technically, if that person is receiving SSI, supplemental security income, that is supposed to provide for their food and shelter.
So a strategy that wouldn't likely qualify or maybe shouldn't would be in the event that maybe if somebody is going to fund a trust through various means and say, well, so when we pass, we want to make sure that our child with special needs has money out of this trust to purchase a home, right? Maybe that may not fly, but maybe there's different ways to structure that. I'm not certain. There's always the plan for different goals, right? But that'd be a quick one that they're probably trying to shut down, right?
I figured that was going to be your question. There is a way, and this, I'm obviously I'm a charter special needs consultant. I'm not an attorney, but I do know that it is possible to place a home in or have a special needs trust to own a home.
So so you could put the funds in the trust, and the trust owns the home.
Correct.
Okay, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not talking legal advice here, and all this stuff needs to get. You should have an estate planning attorney. I think we both feel comfortable making that recommendation to anyone that has special needs considerations within their families is have an estate attorney to help with these types of matters. Especially when we start talking about state specific type programs.